evening and welcome to a very Accy episode of Across the Pitch. We're the soccer show for people who think industry and prudence conquer is something that Caesar said before he got stabbed.
Oh, et tu, brute. I don't do Latin. Tell us what that is, Phil.
Well, industry and prudence conquer is actually the town motto of Accrington, and it does say industry and prudence conquer on the Accrington Stanley badge. And also on the cover of each edition of Raw Milk surrounding the issue number, it does say industry and prudence conquer. What is Raw Milk, you ask? Raw Milk is a fanzine, was created by Joshua Cook, who is a lifelong Accrington Stanley fan. The fanzine is a periodical news magazine written from the perspective of Stanley fans, filled with great interviews. And we have Josh joining us along with Arran and Darren Woodhead, who is, of course, our Accrington correspondent. The four of us sit down, and I've got to warn you, we get pretty acky with it here in this episode. And speaking of industry and prudence conquer, one thing that we do talk about pretty specifically in the episode is the new North American chapter of the official Accrington Stanley Supporters Club. And why industry and prudence conquers is particularly important in relation to that is we will shortly have our official website coming, and the address for the official North American Supporters Club is going to be industryandprudenceconquer.com. So coming very shortly, and we will be announced on this show when you can start going to industryandprudenceconquer.com to get everything North American Accrington related.
Very cool. On this morning's Sunday sit-down edition, we sit down with a gentleman and a scholar, and Darren Woodhead, to chat with Josh Cook, who is the founder, editor, designer, writer, producer, errand boy, tea lady, and everything else in between for a very unique fan magazine based around our favourite League One team.
Who are they?
Who are they? That would be Accrington Stanley.
Exactly. Good morning or afternoon, depending on what side of the pond you're on. We have an extra special guest with us here. We have Josh, who is the founder and author and Mr. Everything for Raw Milk, which is the Accrington Stanley fanzine. If you are over in Accrington, that I'm sure you've seen him out at the matches with these. And Josh did send a couple of them over to us. I actually have them sitting right here on my desk right now, and these he has two 32-liter editions out so far, and these are just excellent. And thank you for coming on the show, Josh. And to start off with, just tell us a little bit about yourself and what made you decide to create the fanzine.
Thanks for having me. That was quite the introduction. I hope I live up to that. The fanzine pretty much came out of just my love of the football club, and I've been following the team now for, I think it's just over 20 years now. I think my first game would be about as a 3 or 4 year old that I can remember. And it just came about with, just wanting to put my own little spin on things. I had a bit of extra time on my hands about 2 years ago when I started it. And I just wanted to build something that I could be proud of and something that is going to cover the team and Heimburn as a whole, really. With a bit of a different spin than the usual that you see around. I'm bored of sort of match day programmes at football games. I was bored of sort of mainstream media, just, sort of media trained nonsense. So I thought, why not create something that everybody could get involved with and sort of have a good laugh putting together, really. So that's where it came from, yeah.
I've got to, I think probably for our listeners, it's Arran here, by the way, Josh. I think for our listeners, we probably need to explain that raw milk reference again, because for our American listeners, they'd probably be thinking Well, according to the US Food and Drug Administration, raw milk poses a serious health risk. But that's not what we're talking about here, is it?
No, there is no actual milk involved at all. That may be something that we look to change this year, maybe some novelty bottles or something like that. But no, raw milk comes from. So anybody that doesn't know, there was a milk advert in the 1980s in Britain which sort of referenced the club and said, I mean, do you want to do the terrible Scouse accent or do you want
Accrington? Accrington Stanley.
Yeah. So it's basically a little kid on it says that something like, I mean, I've heard this advert a million times and now I can't remember what they say. He says something
Accrington
like
Stanley, who are they?
Yeah. It's what Ian was
Well,
doing.
Josh, I think all those Stanley fans just block it out of our minds.
Absolutely.
I remember it.
Yeah, it's something along the lines of if you don't drink your milk, then you'll only be good enough to play for Accrington Stanley. Accrington Stanley, who are they exactly? So the club was the butt of the joke, and then it came from there, really. The whole idea with raw milk was that raw milk in itself is sort of unpasteurized and it's fresh from the cow, isn't it? So what I wanted to do was a little play on everything that we do in the fanzine is sort of fresh. The club hasn't got anything to do with it, so we can say whatever we want when we want to. So that's the sort of rawness to it. So yeah, it's a little bit of a play on the advert as well.
Just one more kind of thing that I wanted to ask you about before we stop talking about milk for conversation is, and I think Darren certainly is in the group of people that never want to hear about milk again, and it just seems that it's one of those things that the fan base is really kind of divided on, where I've heard people say, yeah, that commercial is the best thing that the club ever did, and then other people will say, ask me about anything except milk, and clearly it looks like you're on the milk bandwagon, being that you have named your publication the Raw Milk. Or are you a milk proponent, or would you rather that part of the history just go away altogether?
I think it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? It is the thing where people now say, I mean, apart from being founder members of the Football League, which is probably a little bit more important than the milk advert, I think everyone does know the name of the club, and it is because of that advert, really. Well, right. Certainly people of a certain age group. I am sick of hearing it, though. I mean, Darren always told you. I mean, every time you go abroad, every time you go away, where are you from? Accrington. And then you just get hit with the advert straight. So I live in Manchester now, but I mean, everybody just knows me as that milk guy.
Oh no!
But at the same time, why not embrace it? Who cares? I've used it. People probably recognise that raw milk thing now. So I did actually get the opportunity to try raw milk when I was in London last year, and it was all right. Yeah. So I don't know. It's not too bad. So if you get the opportunity to try it, it's absolutely fine.
Yeah. What makes me laugh, Josh, is when people do, quote that to you, and they think they're so funny, and they're the first person ever to say that to you.
Yeah. I was having a conversation with a couple sort of last summer, and she was just in hysterics saying it to me, and I said as a joke, "Wow, I've never heard that before." And she took it as though I was literally being serious and that I'd never heard it before. So for the next half an hour, she was trying to get a YouTube clip of it up for me, and I was like, "Trust me, I've seen it. Don't worry about it."
Yeah. That's a bit like me and a dingo stole my baby. Oh, man.
Yeah, absolutely. What you will find as well is that anytime any mainstream media or anything on social media quotes the club, so even if the Football League would say something like, they'll tweet something like, John Coleman has won this many matches in this amount of time for Accrington Stanley, I'd say probably the first 5 replies in comments are all people saying, Accrington Stanley, who are they?
Yeah.
You just cannot get away from it. So it's one of those things.
A bit old. Yeah.
It is what it is, though, isn't it?
It is.
Well, and Josh, and that's the reason probably why we're talking to you today, because Phil and I had a bit of a laugh about this one day. We're like, Accrington Stanley, who are they? And that's how we became fans of the club. So
absolutely,
that's the
there
other
you
edge of
go.
that sword, Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. I mean,
we never would have heard of him over here in the first place if it wasn't for that. So for your international branding, it certainly helps to have that out there.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Now let's talk a little bit more about the football side of the team and the fan side of the team, especially because the fan side of the team, that's really where you focus on, and that's why you're a fanzine and not a magazine, is because things are actually told from a fan's perspective. And you do mention in your book, you of course mentioned earlier that you've been a Stanley fan for about 20 years. You do also mention that you're a third generation Stanley supporter. So tell us a little bit about what it's like growing up in a household that supports Stanley, and was there any pressure from kids at school to maybe go and become a Manchester fan or anything like that when you were growing up?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to be honest, my dad is a Liverpool fan, so I've always had that sort of in my household as well. The three generations comes from my granddad on my mum's side was a big Stanley fan since like the 80s. So my mum's side of the family are more Accrington, I'd say. So that's where that comes from. Me, my uncle, my granddad, all massive Stanley fans. In terms of that, yeah, I mean, the big one for, obviously, you've got Manchester United, Manchester City, Liverpool as well. And then I'm sure Darren mentioned it, but most people around us as well support Blackburn or Burnley. So in the playground and basically growing up when you're a kid, you're just surrounded by claret and blue and white massively. I mean, times are changing now. There's many more Stanley fans and Stanley shirts around on children than there was when I was growing up.
Right.
You were very much seen as sort of a little bit, maybe like a football hipster if you supported Accrington.
But damn it.
Yeah.
I like it.
But yeah, like I say, that's changing now. People are having a lot more of a positive attitude towards the club, but that's because people support winning teams, don't they? So it's much cooler to support Accrington now than it was probably 10 years ago, certainly than it was 20 years ago, and I think pretty much 30 years ago no one supported Accrington. Right. So yeah.
The new ownership seems to have had a big part in that. I remember when we first spoke to Scott Brown, he mentioned that there was a drive to give the shirts out to the kids at the schools, which, he was saying exactly the same thing. Like, no one was wearing Accrington Stanley shirts back in the day, and now they are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, what are the figures on that, Darren? Is it 1,500?
Yeah, I think so. Something around that mark, yeah.
Yeah, 1,500, and it's given to year 3 pupils who are about 7 or 8 years old. So maybe kids that are, and then they're invited to the club for the day. They have sort of fun on the pitch and in the stadium. So it's grasping kids at that age who are maybe just gaining their first interests in football and who, possibly they don't have a team to support yet and they can choose Accrington. Or,
get them while they're young, hey?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it is a sort of
pitched
propaganda.
at the right level, yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
that was something that Andy Holt talked about when we talked to him earlier, is that that's a program that he plans to do for as long as he owns the team. And as Darren said, it's about 1,500 shirts a year that are given out to 8-year-old students in the Accrington area. And he looks to be able to make sure that every 8-year-old in the Accrington metro area would have an Accrington shirt each year.
Yeah, I mean, Josh touched on it earlier, and you won't know that phrase, Phil, will you? Hindburn. So that's the Accrington and district. So you've smaller towns and villages on the outlying areas of Accrington. Your Great Tarwood and Rishton, Baxenden, Oswald-Twistle, etc. So he's going around all those areas that are potentially in a catchment area, also for Burnley and Blackburn. So he's drawn up the battleground.
Yeah, I think that he said that there was about 35,000 in Accrington proper, and then about 90,000 people in the full area that he's targeting.
Yeah, and I think that's true, especially in the northwest area as well. Like we've just said there, there's so many teams within sort of like a 50-mile radius.
Yeah.
The Accrington being quite a relatively new football league side, I mean, you do have to sort of use that sort of propaganda, because otherwise you can't really ignore the fact that people have been supporting Blackburn and Burnley since the 1960s. You can't get away from that.
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned before, I when I was 8 years old was about the time that I started following basketball, and that was when I kind of got into sports as a whole. And it is that I think the age where you do get that person where you give that kid a shirt that time, and then he wears that for however many years as a fan for life.
That's it. Yeah, it's very smart, very smart. So, Josh, you were recently on the radio with Accrington assistant Jimmy Bell. Him and John Coleman, who I note seems to be a bit of an avid fan of your zine there, mate. It looks like, I don't know if he's actually reading it or on one of your tweets there, because it looks like he's actually got two. Maybe he's got something inside that book to cover up what he's actually reading. I don't know.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I mean, at this point, those two guys, Jimmy Bell and John Coleman, people know them as Jimmy and John, So tell us about these guys. What do they mean to the club?
I mean, absolutely everything. It's so rare now for two people to be... I mean, I know they went away for a couple of years, but for a management team to come from where they have and to see through 4 promotions in 20 years. I think this year is the 20th. Yeah, this year is the 20th anniversary of their first promotion with the club. To be non-league footballers like they were, and to be in the position that they are, I mean, it's just ridiculous. I can't really think of any other club that has got that sort of affinity with a manager, possibly Burton Albion and Nigel Clough, who's done something similar with them. But I don't think it's been to the extent that John and Jimmy have, especially when you look at sort of the budgets that they've been working with as well.
Right.
Yeah, they're sort of... I mean, a friend of mine called Callum Gibson, who you probably know as well, Darren.
Another Callum. Yeah. Hang on, hold on. We need to get him on the show.
Yeah.
He says that they should be given the keys to the town forever. And after the Accrington Pals, John Coleman and Jimmy Bell are the most important thing to ever happen to the town. Which, to be honest, he's probably not far from right. Not far off there. I'd say it's true. They're everything. They mean everything. Yeah, I've run out of superlatives to say about them.
Fair enough. I think that covered that perfectly. Actually, yeah. They're obviously integral to the team's success over the past 20 years. It's excellent. Yeah, and you're right. 4 promotions. That's pretty much unheard of as well.
Oh,
yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't think of... Since if you look at the teams that we were playing 20 years ago, the likes of people like Chorley and people like that, I don't think there are. I mean, you'd be hard fought to see a club that has been as successful as we have really in the last year. Again, maybe Burton have been up to the Championship. Fleetwood have done something similar to us, and Morecambe. But I mean, Darren, can you think of anybody else that's done?
No, and especially with the backdrop of the financial situation as well, because I think, I think Burton, and like you said, they're good points, Burton and Fleetwood, there's been some good stories, and like Wigan have had a tremendous ride, but I don't think anybody's achieved what they have with just pure management skills, because they've had no backing, no finance really, up until the last 2 or 3 years since Andy Holt's been, so the last promotion, you can say, they've been not back to a massive extent, but they've had a fair chance.
Yeah,
the other promotions were against the odds.
But the thing is that Andy, he's still running a self-sustaining club. He's not just pouring his own money into it, and this is a club that's running on a budget still of less than £2 million per year.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's all done in a tight budget, but it's still they've got a fighting chance. Whereas the other years when we've been promoted, how it happened, it's just pure good management on the footballing side for me.
Yeah, and I think that if you'd have seen us go up sort of the first year we got the playoffs, which was I think 2011. I mean, I think if we'd have gone up to League One then, there's a good chance we probably might not have been in the Football League as we speak now.
Yeah, probably.
Even though Andy's not spending the cash, we're not making any marquee signings. I think he's giving them the stability to offer 2-year contracts instead of just 1 year, and then they can bail without us making any money. Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, that was one thing that Andy said when we talked to him, is that by being in League One, that's something that gives him the ability to be able to offer those 2-year contracts, because he knows that even if you were to get relegated, then you're still going to be at least in League Two next year. And that's what he had said, is that it's really vital for the franchise at this point to be able to stay in League One, because then he always has that 2-year comfort zone to say, okay, I know that at least we're going to have the TV money coming in for the next 2 years.
Yeah, and it's something that, there's countless clubs that have dropped into the National League or the conference that it's sort of affectionately known, and these are big football clubs, historical football clubs that have been Football League sides for 40 years, and once you drop down there, it's not like a Premier League club dropping into the Championship where they get parachute payments of £60 million. These clubs aren't coming back. Wrexham dropped, they never came back. Chester dropped down and they went out of business.
How's it seem like Notts County going to survive down there?
Well,
that blows my mind that they dropped. Actually, they're a well-historied, storied club, if you will.
One of the oldest of them all as well.
Yeah.
I think it either goes one or two ways. Because from a business point of view, I'm no businessman, but just speaking hypothetically, do you spend the money and put all of your eggs in one basket over one season? Then if you drop short, what do you do the following year when you don't have any more money to put into the team?
Right.
So it's tough. I'm very, very glad that it's not an issue that we've had to deal with. But the first couple of years that we were in the Football League, Darren, I don't know what you thought, but I just thought if we were gonna drop down, I don't think we'd ever come back.
No, it was just there were a lot of parallels in that first season in League Two, the season we've just had, where we were clinging on towards the end, and it's just managing to get over the line, isn't it? And then you can start building again. But if we'd dropped, it would have been a difficult. Well, I couldn't to see us coming back at that particular point. No, we wouldn't have done it. Would have been horrendous.
And then it's different conversations that Andy Holt's then having, isn't it? Because he's not going to invest all that into the club when you're only getting maybe half the gates through.
Right. Yeah.
The attendances. Sorry, you might know. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about something a little bit more positive, okay? So you still are in League One. You did get there in the end. In fact, I think you made it with a couple of games to spare. How is your second season in League One going to go next year? Are you going to perhaps, look for promotion, or are you going to be on the back of milk boxes?
Do you want to handle that first, Darren, or?
Oh, thanks for that. Yeah, I think we'll win the league, and
there we go. Gonna walk the league, love it.
I think it's going to be tough. I think it'll just be pretty similar as last year, to be quite honest. I think probably even more difficult in some ways, because we won't have that momentum from the promotion the previous season. There's tons of Northwest clubs in the league, so we're going to have local derbies every week, which is great, but it brings its own pressures as well, doesn't it?
Sure.
But I'm looking forward to it. I don't see why we can't, try and do what we did last year and bob around mid-table for a long periods and stay up. That's my outlook. I don't know if that's pessimistic, optimistic. It's just the way I see it.
I think anything that involves staying up is a good scenario. Obviously, you want to be as high up on the table as you can, but at this point, it is still the club's second year in League One, and I think the goal right now is just to at least stay there and then start building on that foundation. And, maybe with some of those 2-year contracts like you were talking about, maybe next year be able to bring in more guys and start looking at the top of the table type of things.
It'd be nice if there were no promotion relegation, wouldn't it, guys?
I know for the Tulsa Roughnecks, they're pretty happy that there's no relegation.
That's just a bit of an in-joke because these guys support Phoenix Rising and in the division there, and they don't have promotion and relegation, so it would be nice for us this year, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
No.
Well, it's coming in next year in the second tier competition. So
That's
second
incredible.
through to fourth tier, basically, we'll have promotion relegation. But yeah,
How
no.
so you win the league, and then that's you. Do you win the league, or is it just?
Oh, it's even worse than that, mate. So once you win the league, then you go into a finals series. So you win a little trophy, and then you have finals after that, so you might not actually win the league after winning the league. It's quite bizarre from an English perspective.
Yeah, it sounds similar to the system that they have in rugby league in England.
It is,
Quite
Josh.
right,
It's very
actually.
similar.
Spot on.
Rugby league. Yep.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
no need to
I brought it up, Josh. Yeah, Josh, I
see.
brought it up because these guys give me quite a bit of stick because they're all Phoenix Rising fans. So I thought I've learned quite a bit about US football over the last few weeks and months. So I thought for a bit of fun, I'd choose another team to follow instead of Phoenix Rising. So I picked out Tulsa.
How are they going, by the way, Darren?
Just
I
because I like the
stellar
sound of
choice.
Yeah, it's a bit like when you go to the horse racing and you know nothing about it, so you just choose a name that you like. So I chose the Tulsa Roughnecks, and they're probably the most out of form team in the world. They're getting beat like 6-0 every week.
And folks may not know this, but Darren picked the Tulsa Roughnecks because he got to the game and the last player to come out of the bathroom was other Roughnecks.
What?
No, nobody got that. You bet on the horse shits before the race.
No.
Nobody ever heard that before.
No.
I
You're
thought
right.
that was another in-joke.
Bet on the horse that you see take a shit before the race. I'm the only one that's ever heard that. I can't believe it.
I'm going to have to look it up.
Yeah.
Well, it must be only Americans know that or think that something that stupid will actually work, one or the other. We digress.
We do.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I took us off the subject.
No, that's all right. Basically, we were saying that you had a poor choice in team, and we're going to give you a stick for the rest of the season.
It's been good fun.
Let's get back to the topic of Stanley, and what we are talking about kind of leads into the next thing, and one of the things that you had, of course, mentioned, Darren, was the number of matchups against northern teams, and now this is a northeastern team, so it's not quite a local derby, but it has been recently announced that you will now have not one, but two matches against the massive Sunderland.
Yeah, we're going to be on plenty of the documentary, aren't we?
Looking forward to that episode. Yeah,
that's going to be a pretty good gate receipt for you guys, both of those days. And how much does it mean to a team like Stanley to have some of these big clubs come in and fill up the house and buy out all your beer for the day?
It's great.
It all helps, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I think a lot's made about a lot was made maybe by Sunderland fans on Twitter this year, but I mean, going back to when every season we've had in the Football League, there's always been teams that have come out and sold out the away end. It's nothing new, really. I think that they sort of pushed that narrative a little bit more than it should have been. But,
yep.
Yeah, like you say, I mean, to have them come in twice is fantastic. I don't know how they'll feel about that with all the sort of stuff that went on with Andy Holt last year and charging them twice and all that. He doesn't seem to be too well liked in that part of the world. I was talking to a Sunderland fan just before we played them in February, and yeah, he wasn't. He had too many good things to say about our illustrious chairman, but like you say,
I get the feeling he doesn't care either.
No, absolutely. Take the money while you can. Absolutely, have them in town. I mean, it could be. Well, it might not be on TV actually. I mean, it could be a choice for the television. I'm actually on holiday that week, so I'm hoping that it's on the Wednesday and not the Tuesday.
Ooh. Going anywhere nice?
Sicily.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, South of Italy. Fantastic.
Right
Going to a music festival over there. Gorgeous. But I'm missing the Bury, the first home game of the season as well, which has turned out to be Bury, which is one of those northern teams that you just mentioned.
Right. That's a bit of a derby there.
Yeah, it is a little bit, isn't it? I mean, what is that, Darren? Is it about 9 miles to Bury?
Yeah, something like that. Probably a bit less for me, being Baxenden, yeah, but yeah, it's
For those of you that don't know, Bury is halfway between Accrington and Manchester.
I mean, it is our most local club in Division, but there doesn't tend to be much of a rivalry, I don't think, Josh, is there real?
No, not really. I mean, I've always had good days when I've been there. I mean, I think the issue is that when teams look at Accrington, unless they've been through the non-league system with us, you know, why would you think? You wouldn't think of us as a rival, would you? No. Bury hate Rochdale, and they'll be in the same division this year, so they sort of concentrate on each other, don't they? And we just sort of fall by the wayside.
That's a good question to ask, actually. Who would be Accrington's most heated rivals, shall we say?
I think it's changed over the years. I think the one that people would say currently is Morecambe.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
Not Sunderland?
Well, if they stay for a few more years in this league, maybe. But no, Morecambe have been the one who, over the last sort of...
Luton a little bit too.
Oh yeah, but that was literally only because we beat them to the league, wasn't it?
Yes.
The thing with Morecambe was that in the past we've always been pretty much at the same level. We've shared players because we've been on sort of similar budgets. We've always sort of tried to outbid each other. We've even shared directors over the years as well. I mean, not typically nasty rivalry, but it has got a little bit tasty over the last couple of years, certainly.
I think it just goes back to the point that of the amount of times that, like Josh says, that we've played them. You know, right back from Northern Premier League into the Conference, and they came into the Football League at the time to us, and it just builds up over time, doesn't it? And we have had that rivalry with established Football League clubs because we haven't been around long enough.
Because you keep kicking on up, that's why.
We just leave everyone behind and move on.
Yeah, I mean, that's been the case with teams like, you know, if you ask sort of the people that were watching the team 20 years ago, 15 years ago, you'd say Altrincham were a rival back in the day. Right. At one time, Altrincham were a bigger club than us. We left them by the wayside. Barrow as well. Barrow didn't like us for a couple of years. And Burton Albion as well. We had a little bit of a thing with them over the years as well, but they're the only ones that are sort of with us now. And Barrow's not nasty anymore, is it?
No.
Because I think the nastiness came when we were the two best sides in the division. But that's obviously not the case now, so we don't really care about each other.
Oh, you and your lofty high horse over there.
It's quite strange, though, for us, Accrington fans, as like Josh said, you look, when we were in, say, 3 leagues, 4 leagues below what we are now, all these teams, I used to hold them in high esteem, your Barrow and Altrincham. I thought, I'd love Accrington to be as big as them one day. And now they're 3 or 4 divisions below us. It's weird. It is a strange phenomenon, really.
Yeah, it's just really been an amazing ascent since 1999, like we talked about with the 4 promotions, which is just really unheard of. You normally hear something like maybe like a Salford City where some billionaires come in and buy a team and run them up, or even a team like Leyton Orient that dropped down to non-league, and then they had some wealthy investors come along, and or even like Portsmouth where they had the Disney people come in. And the thing is with Accrington, Andy is a local guy who has come in and gives some stability to the team, but there's never just been this outside money that's come in and lifted you guys up the way that some of these other clubs have.
No, and that again goes back to the non-league days. I mean, Eric Worley was the person who oversaw sort of the early days, and he was a local chap based in Great Harwood, which is just on sort of in Hyndburn, which is the area that Darren was talking about. I mean, he's a local guy, and he has got that little bit of money, and there's a relatability factor to him as well, isn't there? I mean, if we were having this success with a Thai billionaire, for instance, you probably don't have anything in common with him. The good thing about Andy is that you know that he's a regular local sort of chap done well, and he enjoys, a pint of beer at the end of a game, and does all the same interests that sort of we have on the terraces. So
yeah.
Stan Kroenke hasn't offered to come on the show, so
yeah. No,
I wouldn't have him on our show.
Maybe for next year, Phil.
Yeah. Tricky second album.
Yeah.
It's a good time to be an Accy fan, though, isn't it, guys? Hey? It's always a good time to be an Accy fan. And if you are an Accrington fan, or if you haven't picked your English club yet and you're over here in North America, we have recently started up the official Accrington Stanley Supporters Club of North America. You can find the Facebook group. It's called Official Accrington Stanley Supporters of North America, so it's nice and easy to find. We're going to be having some pins and events and all kinds of things, and getting Accy over here in the US and Canada.
That's great. How many members have you got now, Phil?
2.
Oh, we're close to it.
I kid.
No, you'll have 3, I think. Tony Robinson, he's keen on Stanley, isn't it?
Oh, well, we got close to 100 in the Facebook group.
Yeah.
Oh, that's growing every day. So, but yeah, it's us over here from the show, myself and Arran and Matt, who is our other co-host, and then we have Mike Palella, who is going to be kind of like our vice president over here. He's a guy that's really involved with the Banditos supporters group.
I like to call him Madman Mike, because you should see him at the games. He is invested. Wow.
And
he's done some good stuff over the weekend, hasn't he?
Yes, he did.
He was cooking for the homeless guys in the park.
Yeah, shout out to that, Mike. That is
wasn't
great stuff, man.
Yeah.
And, hey, Mike,
brilliant.
if you're listening, let us know when that's happening next, because we'd like to make an appearance.
Yeah, it looks like some good burgers and sausages you had going out there. And Mike is just such a great guy in the community, and if you have a chance to get out to a Phoenix Rising game and you're over in the Bandito section, stop by and say hi to Mike. He's a great guy.
He really is. Well, while we're on the topic of American football teams, and you knew this question was coming, Darren, so if you had to choose one, would you go for Phoenix Rising? And if you could see my fingers right now, it'd be thumbs up. Or would you go for another team like, I don't know, Tulsa Roughnecks? No.
Tulsa Roughnecks every day of the week for me. I'm sticking with them.
You do it, mate. You do it.
This time next year, when they're top of the league that you can't go up from. So you're bottom of the league where you can't get relegated. No, I'll stick with them a bit longer yet. They've engaged with me on Twitter as well, so it's become a bit of a laugh actually, because I do know that they've had a lot of English players over the years that's what made them stand out to me, really, because I just remember them in the 80s and 90s when they had English players going over there all the time. So it's a bit of fun, isn't it?
And that's
keeps me going until Stanley get going again.
Yeah, and it is a good bit of fun. And you know what, you do make a very good point, because Phoenix Rising is brand new. They're 3 seasons old, not if you count the Arizona United SC days. But Tulsa Roughnecks is one of those story teams over here in a country that doesn't have a huge amount of history when it comes to soccer.
Rich soccer history. That one's for you, Edward.
Good out, Edward. How are you,
and then the Tulsa Roughnecks, they also do have Idrisu Abdallah. He is the striker from Ghana that we talked about a little bit in our recent interview that we did on the Ghana Premier League. So if you haven't had a chance to check that out, Idrisu Abdallah, he's a guy to watch over there with the Tulsa Roughnecks.
But anyway, my question was to Josh. Josh, Phoenix Rising, eh?
I have absolutely no idea. In terms of where are they like a university team, or are they in? I mean, how many levels are they below the MLS? So many questions.
They would be.
These are good questions.
To the EFL Championship.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And is that? I take it that's regional then.
Well, they're broken. This is going to be very. Yeah.
If we get a 300-mile road trip, that's a short one for us.
Yeah.
So wow. So the team's professional then. Yeah.
Yes.
And it's not a university team.
No. So they do represent the Greater Phoenix area. Okay. There are other football clubs from Phoenix in other competitions. We won't mention them. But
yeah, so for me trying to understand it, Josh, I think a championship beneath
say that
it.
Again. Sorry, say
it's
that.
a little bit like having,
it's
like having the Premier League and then a North and South Championship.
Right, yeah. So a little bit like the conference.
So yeah, with some decent sized clubs all playing below that top tier.
Right. Okay.
Is that am I right, guys, or is that?
No, I think you're absolutely spot on there, Darren. It's exactly right. Rather than north and south, this is east and west.
East and west, yeah.
Yeah, and there is a real parity. We were talking about this last week on the show. There is a real parity between the top of the USL and the bottom of the MLS. Relegation isn't going to happen anytime soon because, well, there's too much money in the MLS and they don't want to see their clubs go down because they paid a fortune to get their clubs into that competition.
Yeah, and you're seeing that with, I think Beckham's trying to do that in Miami, isn't he, as well?
Yes.
Something along those lines. And I'm guessing you've got to sort of prove, you've got to tick a lot of boxes to be able to be let into that MLS club.
That's exactly right. And that's, I think, why the club, I know why the club went through the rebrand. Their entire goal was to set themselves up in the USL as a legitimate organisation with a good fan base and go, hey, here we are.
Yeah.
And they're certainly doing that.
No, yeah, it seems to be building something nice there. The videos that you guys put on, it seems to be a good little crowd. And all the best to them.
Yeah, we definitely, especially here in Phoenix, we get a good crowd out. I think we've sold out all the home games so far this year.
Yeah, and if you're ever here, you got to join us for Dollar Beer Night because those things are just off the chain.
You might get a little wet though.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like, if you can imagine, Josh, there's no restrictions on taking alcohol onto the terraces. So imagine what the Clayton end would be like without.
Absolutely.
It's mayhem. It's beautiful.
It is mayhem.
And in terms
it looks good fun.
Yeah, in terms of attendances, then what numbers are you getting?
Roughly about 7,000, just under 7,000.
That's impressive.
I think. Yeah, the ground is only meant to hold about 6-8, I think, but they regularly clock over that. They call the fire marshal.
They're talking about expanding it out to 10, and then that would be as far as they could go with that venue, is what I'm hearing.
I mean, 10 would be, that's excellent. That'd be a great little cauldron for football.
Yeah, it really is.
I've got a question for you, Josh.
Go for it.
What have you got coming up, Josh, in terms of future?
In terms of raw milk,
what have you got coming up our way?
Yeah, a few little things in the pipeline, really. This summer, we're looking at sort of, just trying to broaden the horizons, really. The first season that we did, I just did it on Twitter and Facebook to try and build some sort of social media sort of following, a platform. And then this year we turned out 2 fanzines, which is a bigger job than I originally expected it to be. And that's why there's only 2.
They look fantastic. They
really do.
I'm blown away. When I got them in the mail, I couldn't believe just the quality of that. This isn't something that's printed on flimsy magazine paper. This is, this is high
publication.
Quality.
Yeah, and that was something that I thought about before I did it, because I wanted it to be something that was credible and something that had been looked at and sort of respected by the people that matter. I've got a guy who does the design for me. He's a chap that I used to work with who's really talented and puts all that together nicely. And yeah, we didn't really, like I say, it was no expense spared really with it. The sponsorship that we get from a few of the advertisements in there sort of cover our printing costs. We use a sort of local printers to do that, and everything's been great. So yeah, the quality of it was something that we definitely thought about, or I definitely thought about when I put out there, because I've bought fanzines in the past and they're just, I mean, they're not worth the paper that they're printed on.
Yeah.
I mean, I also wanted that's why it took so long for me to put them out, because I wanted the quality of the interviews and everything else in there to reflect that as well, because there's no point in it looking fantastic if it's rubbish to read. So that's what we were thinking about with the quality thing. In terms of over the summer, I'd like to start doing some sort of recorded interviews, so like a podcast sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
I've got a few of those lined up. I'm just sort of trying to find out my niche really, because the football content, certainly in Britain and worldwide, is so saturated.
Right.
And I don't want it just to be sort of something that's naff and listened to by 3 people. So whenever I think about what I want it to be, we'll start sort of producing those. And yeah, something similar to what you guys were just mentioning. I'm sort of looking at pin badges, sort of broadening that so that you can see people on the terrace that recognise the logo. Mugs as well, so that you can drink sort of tea and coffee out of.
With a nice mug of milk, yes.
Yeah, a few little bits of merchandise, but the main thing is I'd like another fanzine out on the opening day of the season. So that's my job for the summer.
What I like about the fanzine is it's not just football related. So you've got loads of stuff in there, and Josh, he's obviously got his own mind, and he's put other things in there, like it can be about fashion and music, etc., whatever, and it makes it a little bit more interesting than just sitting down and looking at 32 pages of football.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing I did just want to throw out there is anyone that is interested in advertising in raw milk, advertisement at rawmilk.co.uk is where you can email Josh at, and if you want to get your advertisement in the book, that's advertisement at rawmilk.co.uk.
Very nice, thank you for that. But yeah, I'm just touching on what Darren said. What I wanted it to be was less of a sort of traditional monotonous football fanzine and more something that captured the Hyndburn area and the overall Accrington area. That's why we get the guy who Trickett, who's a local clothing company. We let him do something in there. Music. I've got a few of the local bands to do pieces in there. And yeah, I'd like to broaden it out to do, sort of local filmmakers. Anything that I'm interested in, really, I want to put in there. So we'll build that. I think Darren's putting something in the next one as well, aren't you, Darren?
Really? Oh, we didn't hear about that. Tell us about that.
No, I mean, just on another point is the actual quality of the fanzine. Usually in that same point, I thought, well, that'll be fine for me. So I've gone to the same printer who Josh used.
Oh, excellent.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
That's right. Your book is coming out next month, isn't it, Darren?
It is. It's all done now. It's just waiting for it actually to be printed off. All the proofs are done, and just waiting for the season to start, and then we'll get some copies out there. Yeah. And one other point that we haven't touched on is Josh's granddad is actually in the book, because his late granddad, who was a great guy. Dennis was a former manager of Accrington Stanley.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah. So
that's
I've
true.
got a nice picture in the book that Josh's dad gave to me, and yeah.
Yeah, he was
That's fantastic.
Sort of like a local journeyman, non-league manager. So he actually managed Stanley for a bit and a load of other local teams. So a true football man. So yeah, it's good to see him in there. Thanks for that, Darren. Nice.
No,
Can I just say, Josh, by the way, raw milk, 32 litres of, that was brilliant.
Yeah.
So it's 32 pages, but of course you've got a litre per page. And it sounds like Phil was going to drop one off to me last night, but I'm really looking forward to getting my nose into that book. That looks like a lot of fun, then.
Thank you, and by all means, if you'd like to write something for the next one, send it over to me.
Can we? Oh,
of course,
man.
yeah.
I think the North American Supporters Club story, Phil, and starting it, I think that'd be a great little story.
There you go.
Yeah,
that's perfect. I think that'd really be of interest to people.
All right, yep, let's do it, Phil. That sounds like a great story, eh?
Yeah, I'll have to. So with the North American Supporters Group, how it kind of started is, when we started the show and started really following Stanley, is what I found is it is very difficult to get anything Stanley over here. I remember I was probably one of the first people to ever order Darren's book, and I had to email Peter Latham, who's the head of the Accrington Supporters Club, and actually have him add a North American shipping option so that I could. It got to be one of those things where I was always having to email Peter and say, hey, can you make an option so that we can get this over here? The more and more that I started talking to him and kind of pitched the idea that we should start a North American chapter at the Supporters Club. He was really excited about it, and immediately talked to Andy about having the pins made up. Those are supposed to be coming anytime soon. We're gonna, start off with 100 pins. We're also basing it over here in Phoenix, but it's gonna be one of those things where Phoenix is our home base, but it started out as just being the U.S. And then Tony Robinson, who's actually a guy who was in your first issue, said, "Hey, I'm up here in Canada. Can we make it North America?" So then it turned into the North American Supporters Group, and then we have, of course, Mike, who we talked about earlier, is going to be our vice president over here. We're looking at trying to get set up where here in Phoenix, we're going to try and have at least a once a month meetup at a bar to still be determined, where we're together and watch a Stanley game and, kind of sell the supporters pins. And then, of course, on our website, which is acrossthepitch.com, we're going to have a supporters club page set up where people can come on and buy the pins and get them all around the country, and put up things like the raw milk and Darren's book, and kind of make it so that Across the Pitch is the American home of Accrington Stanley.
Sounds good. Great idea.
Can you tell he's excited about this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the passion in your voice there is something.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on, Darren.
We need more people in Accrington with that same passion.
Literally about to say that. That passion in your voice is something that has been lacking from people that live 200 yards from this stadium. Never mind.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
1,000 miles away or whatever it is.
Couldn't be more excited to get everything started next year, and Peter has just been so helpful with anything I've asked him for. He's helped me out with, and once again, it's official Accrington Stanley Supporters Club of North America on Facebook and on Twitter. We are putting more on Facebook. Haven't really gotten the Twitter going all the way yet, but as the season fires up, it's going to be a bigger and bigger thing, and we can't tell how many people have, for instance, heard the Andy Holt interview and said, I watched the Phoenix Rising, but I hadn't really followed English football before. That interview made me want to go root for Accrington Stanley, and we just think that there's a huge opportunity to grow a fan base over here, and make it so that Accrington Stanley is a brand that's known all over America too.
Yeah.
And not just for the Built commercial.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.